Welcome to WFAN Daily and a very special first edition of Anthony Gallo's MLS season review or season preview. And we are looking to do a weekly show where I get to cover my favorite sport, soccer or football, as Bradley knows it. And let's just get to the chase. The great, MLS legend, Bradley Phillips, a man who's haunted my dreams as an NYCFC supporter. The sixth all-time MLS scoring, the third best goals per game rate, an absolute lethal scorer. He also has 14 goals all-time against NYCFC, and I feel like I was there for every single one of them. But Bradley, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you, man. That's a nice welcome. Nice welcome. What? I'm the first person on the show?
Yes, the first edition of this.
Oh,
they let me have my own toy, and I'm very excited. I love the league. I did not grow up a Metro Stars Red Bull fan, but I did grow up a fan of the league. U.S. men's national team kind of got me into the sport. And then as the league grew, I just fell in love with it. And I'm very excited for this chance to talk to you. But the first thing I want to start with, it is something I'm very excited about too, as a fan of the league, is MLS's partnership with Apple, which is the Season Pass. And this is the third season, correct?
Yeah, third season.
And this is your third season on the team?
Exactly. I joined when it first started up. So I've been there since the beginning. Obviously seen a lot of improvement since the beginning. It was always good. It was always a place where the MLS fan and fans around the world can go and watch every game in one place. So I've been enjoying it. I'm learning every day.
I love it. And I agree. There's been a lot of improvements. And before we get to what I think is the biggest addition to it, you guys have done things. They added Sunday night soccer this year, which I love.
Amazing.
Especially during a very, not slow time, but, we're not in American football season yet.
Yeah.
So no one really owns Sunday nights in the American sports landscape. I love it. I love the wraparound show. I think the crew is great. You guys are phenomenal. How has that experience been? Just, starting something new, which to be fair is almost new to just American sports, not even just, I guess, the footballing world.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Starting something new, there's almost, you don't know what to expect. I was the first time I was on TV weekly. So for me, it was just getting used to the cameras, getting used to production in your ear, all of these things, and just trying to be myself. I think that's the main thing you can do. I think as a football player, you probably don't know my personality. So anytime I can bring that out and let the viewers, see my personality and understand how I see the game, that's doing a good job for me. But it's been brilliant, man.
It's been amazing. I love it. I get excited. It's also, I am a season ticket holder. I told you off air for NYCFC, so we get access to all of it also. I would have subscribed if I wasn't. And honestly, a lot of my friends who are fans of the sport, but not necessarily fans of the league, I've seen more of them get into it because it's easier for them to learn the names.
Exactly.
There's a lot of new teams, obviously, over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
But one of the best things I think they've done, I haven't finished the series, but Onside, the MLS docuseries, what are your thoughts on that? Like how, I don't know. I've only watched a little bit, so I don't know how much of a part of it you are.
Yeah, I think I'm up to like maybe episode 5, maybe. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty much like addicted to that. But I think it's just great to see, inside of locker rooms, inside of players' mind, inside of the training ground, the facilities, the players traveling to a game, what they really think. I think it's important that the players and the coaches talking, they're not holding back. Normally when you hear anyone, not just football, but anyone talking about sports or talking about their team, it's always the generic answers. Yeah, we'll try again. We'll be better next week. When you're hearing them talk onside, it's just raw and uncut and people just spilling out their emotions. And I love it.
Yeah, it's been great. And, we have something similar that was very popular. It's been going on for more than a decade in Hard Knocks. And I feel like this
I'll stop you there. Perfect. I'm so sorry to cut you, but Hard Knocks, I don't like American football. I can't get into it. I know it's America's sport. It's, it gets the people at their house, gets people around the TV, but I never liked it. But Hard Knocks, I could watch that all day because you're learning about individuals. You're learning about a club or a franchise. It's so good. I love TV like that.
Right. And the one thing I was going to say is I feel like with Hard Knocks, sometimes they know there's more of a awareness that the cameras are around and it's not in season. The first 2 episodes that I've seen so far, the one thing I realized, it's very raw.
Yeah.
And I loved it. The one thing I wanted to ask was, in your playing days, whether it would have been in the MLS or back in England, how would you have been with this amount of access to you? Not just in post-game pressers, but just all the time like that. It has to be a lot.
Yeah, I grew up in the era. I started playing like, early 2000s, 2004, maybe five. And you don't talk as a professional football player. You didn't talk. You don't. All the important conversations or the most conversations were kept for the training ground between you and the coach and you and your teammates. So for me, it would be difficult to get my head around. But I like it. The game's changed. The world has changed. Media's changed. And it just gives people a closer look into what, goes on daily in a professional athlete's life. So I like it. I don't know how I would have dealt with it. I might have got cancelled. I was probably saying some reckless things, but yeah, I think it's good.
Well, I've loved it. And also I think the timing of it, you were a part of the league in where the growth, I feel like, really took off, post David Beckham, Henri had been here.
Yeah.
You played with legends just in the Red Bull system. But I feel like it's the perfect time, not just because of the arrival of obviously Messi, you got more arrivals like Zaha coming, but just where the average level of the player is, the competition. It feels like the perfect time for that. Do you think that this will have an impact not just on the American market, but maybe even an international market, not necessarily North America, but maybe in England or overseas?
I hope so. I think it will be a good look, especially with, the US being at the forefront of it. I also think there was one similar, especially in the Premier League with, I think Amazon Prime done one, and they went around a few football teams like Man City, Arsenal, and it went down well. So this is no different. And it just brings in, like you said about Hard Knocks. I'm not a big fan of American football, but I was locked in every show. And any fan that we can get to, pay attention more to MLS football, the better off we'll be.
Right. I totally agree. And as somebody who, in the US, I have a hard time getting people at times to buy into the league. And the more and more I get people, if I bring them to a game, whether it's at Red Bull Arena or Sports Illustrated Arena or Yankee Stadium, City Field, soon to be Etihad Field.
Looks amazing.
Which is, I'm very excited for. The one thing I wanted to ask too, and I've heard you other places, obviously I told you I followed you a long time. What is the difference you've seen being around the league since day one that you got here to now? Because they're drastically different, obviously, not just the size of the league. I feel like the level of competition, there's way more matches now.
Yeah. I'd say soccer-specific stadiums, one. A lot of teams now have their own stadium, built their own culture. I think that's changed a lot. I'd say the standard of not just players, there was always quality players. There was always good individuals. But I think now teams, the actual team, the style of play they want to do, the philosophy, you can see it clearer nowadays. So I think teams are getting coached a little more. And then I think the superstars that are coming in are younger. Mm-hmm. So then it's not just, it's not just called a retirement league. It's not a great player coming over when, he's on his way out. And I think that's been very important. You're seeing Messi come over and he's still able to do things that we've seen him do when he was in Europe, when he was playing at Barca. So I think that's been important. And then in terms of just the buy-in just around, like domestically, the buy-in's been amazing. Anywhere I go now, I'm seeing an MLS shirt. When I first came, maybe just in New Jersey, I'll see like a Red Bull shirt. Mm-hmm. Or if I'm in New York, I might see a Red Bull shirt. Now I'm seeing NYCFC shirts. I'm seeing Red Bull. You're obviously seeing number 10 Inter Miami.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere. So football's obviously made some huge strides. And you got to think it's a very young league. It's only 30 years. Mm-hmm. Imagine 10 more years, what we're going to be seeing, especially after the World Cup coming here, Club World Cup. It's going to be amazing. We're in a great place now for football in America.
It's very exciting. And you're right. I mean, like, I remember watching it and being like, no one, outside of if Beckham was playing and Henri, I couldn't get a single person to watch with me, let alone really get invested in the season. And now it feels more and more it's commonplace. And I agree. Like, I went over even to Europe last year and I was shocked to not just see Messi kits, but also other jerseys of other players around the league. Before we get to the local clubs, because we are a New York sports station, the Red Bulls are a partner of ours. We used to have NYCFC on our air. I wanted to get more into the overall outlook. We all know Miami, obviously, and they didn't win the MLS Cup. And obviously, in the U.S., the playoffs are everything. It's not typical to football across the globe. When it comes to outside of Miami, are there any teams you look at as a potential, not just MLS Cup winner, but Supporters Shield winner?
Yeah, I would have to say LAFC because they're defensively very strong. Columbus, the style of football, how they're coached, they got difference makers at the top end of the field. Cincinnati haven't had a great start, but when I think about the players coming back, like a Matt Miazga centre back, and the two players they got like DPs and Kevin Denke and Why can't I think of?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank right now too. Kevin Denke, also one of the 2 highest transfer fees ever, correct?
Yes, yeah, unbelievable striker. I know he's just come, but his all-round game is unbelievable. A great hold-up play, can score. So they look like a strong team. And then you're looking at, it's hard to write off Galaxy. I know they had a great season last year.
Right. And they don't feel like I don't want to be disrespectful. It doesn't feel sustainable from their end.
And it's not easy to go back to back and win silverware. But with Ricky Puig coming back halfway through the year, who knows, So a lot of contenders, a lot of teams that could surprise you. But there's some of the names.
I'm very excited for,
Sorry, Evander. I couldn't think of Evander's name for some reason.
Yeah. So I probably should have realized it. But, Charlotte's another team that sticks out to me. And I know Atlanta, they obviously upset Miami last year. It feels like the 2 additions, obviously bringing back Almiron and then getting Latte Lat. How you pronounce it? Thank you.
Yeah, Latte Lat. Yeah.
I struggled. I was practicing before but those are 2 major, and he's another one that I think is the highest transfer fee in MLS history.
Yeah.
So those are teams to watch out for. And I guess that's where my next question is there a signing that a team made that excites you? One of the guys maybe we listed or somebody we haven't spoken about yet?
You just mentioned it. If you didn't say it before, is Wilfred Zaha.
Mm-hmm.
I think Wilfred Zaha, in his first game, he gets a goal, and I think he got credited the assist. But
Mm-hmm.
Wilfred Zaha, obviously, I'm a big Premier League fan, and I've got a little love for Crystal Palace, and he single-handedly kept them up and made them survive, for years at Crystal Palace. Won them promotion. He's just an unbelievable player. He's one of those players that, he's not going to always score, but when you go and watch him, you're going to be excited. He gets fans out of their seat. Just him in 1v1 situations is a joy to watch, and he ain't nowhere near his best yet, and we're still seeing some class from him. So for me, that's probably my newcomer of the year. He will be that.
I agree, and that's actually the first. Last winter I got to go to, or 2 winters ago, I got to go to actually Selhurst.
Nice.
And he is a legend there. He's painted all over the town.
Yeah,
he obviously wasn't with the club at the time, but he's someone I love too. And I actually think guys like you, Giovinco, certain players that were amazing players and maybe not the world-class names that, Henry and Messi are, or even David Villa for NYCFC. But you guys came in and that's what really solidified the league, because that's where we had guys that were not, and I don't want to call them over the hill, but were not at the back end of their career, and you guys were really in your prime.
Without being arrogant, I would agree with you, because I think it's that, and I don't even know if I'll put myself in a Giovinco category, but it's that level of player with still something to prove. You got a little name, but you come over here with something to prove. We've seen top players come, but they've already done it all. So it's hard to get that motivation to want to, stand out in America. For me, it was a place where I was like, I'm coming here, I want to make my own name. And it gave me that little chip on my shoulder to go and do well. And I think the players that you named were similar in that way.
Yeah, and to be fair, like I said, I told you this off air, my introduction to the sport is really FIFA as a kid, outside of the U.S. men's national team. Your brother being one of my favorite players, and you obviously you were a lot younger at the time.
Yeah.
When you came here, I was so excited. NYCFC, not a thing. First time I see you live, you scored. I think you scored the 2 goals in the first Hudson River Derby. And then you scored the equalizer at Yankee Stadium, and I was like, you know what? He could go back. I'm done with this already. But your number's retired. You're a club legend. So let's start there with the local teams. Obviously, I mentioned Red Bull's an awesome sponsor of ours. They haven't started slow, but 1-0-1. Do you think that they can possibly repeat and build on what they did last year, which was despite NYCFC, but an amazing run where they got to the MLS Cup final? I don't think anyone saw it coming.
No.
And do you think they could build off that and possibly get back to that level?
It's not a case of think. I think they have to. I think they've shown last season what they're capable of. I think Red Bull, for the last few years, while they haven't been amazing in attack, they've had a solid foundation and defense. So they can defend. A lot of Red Bull games, apart from the New York City game where they lost badly, I don't want to repeat the score, you don't really see them concede many goals. And that's what can carry them through in a playoff situation. I think they needed to add up top, and they've done that. They've got Forsberg, who was very good in his first season, bar injuries. If he didn't get an injury, I think Red Bull could have finished higher up the table, to end the season. And then they bring in Choupo-Moting. He hasn't started well in front of goal, but his all-round play has been very good. I think if that combination clicks and they get Lewis Morgan back healthy, scoring goals, I think it's a team that could be a dark horse.
Yeah, and their back line that was essentially
Solid.
what put
Yeah.
NYCFC out on the season, and then they also was a big reason why they won that Eastern Conference Finals game.
Exactly.
Is there a player? Obviously, you mentioned Emil Forsberg. Is there a player that you really stands out to you, that maybe a younger player that the fans may not be as aware of, that really you like for the Red Bull this year?
Yeah, I'll just go with young players because I think we know most of the first team players, but I think through injury, a lot of young players have got a chance, and you'll see Julian Hall, you'll hear his name a lot. He's very talented. Mohamed Sofo just scored on the weekend on his MLS debut. These are good young players that really understand the Red Bull way, but don't also have a lot of talent in the final third, a lot of, game-winning attributes. So if I was saying to look out for anyone, it would be those kind of players.
So we pivot across now because I know we don't have too much time. They're celebrating their 10th year. I was there day one. It's a lot of ups. There are a lot of downs too. It seems a little bit more on a downtrend right now. With key departures, they lose Santi Rodriguez. It felt like we knew it was coming, but it felt like hours before the opening kickoff. And James Sands goes to Germany. Do you think they are, because I'm a little down on NYCFC this year. Do you believe that they have enough to just get back to the playoffs, let alone compete for silverware?
I think on paper, it doesn't seem like that. And only because it's MLS, I want to write it off. But I would agree with you. I was disappointed with New York City this year, just what they've done in the transfer window. If you're going to lose a player that big, especially for the fans, you need to bring someone in that can, decide games. That's what it's all about. Be solid at the back and then get some match winners, get some game deciders in there. And I don't think they've done enough. But I do like Alonso Martinez. I think if you're putting him in the right situations, he can win you games. But I honestly don't think they've done enough in the transfer window.
Well, that's what my fear was, because it took Alonso so long to get going, and it was the second half of the season. He had a ridiculous.
It's not until he went up. It's not until he went in that number 9 spot. I remember you guys were fighting, all season who should play in the 9. You had Bakra, you have him, and he took that spot. Credit to him. But just the creativity I worry about.
Yeah, and they have a solid. I felt their back line is fine. Thiago Martins is amazing. Like they have that wasn't my fear. And their struggles last year felt like they got even worse at it. Andrade got picked in the expansion draft, which I know he didn't play a lot, but it felt like somebody who maybe could slot in. Tyler Magnus left. I think the fan base feels like you do. Like they feel like, and they do have flexibility on the roster. Which maybe later in the season they do something.
Yeah, I think Malachi Jones coming back. I'm not sure if he's back or when he's back from injury, but he was a really bright spark for New York City. Yes. I think if they can keep him fit, he's definitely one to watch in the season. He'll come back with the bit between his teeth, having missed a lot of last season, especially the important part. And then I also like your fullbacks. I like Tavon Gray and I like Ilinic. I like that competition between them. They're both good, especially Tavon Gray 1v1 defensively. Yes. But when they get forward, they have final product to get balls in the box. If you're looking at an Alonso Martinez, if I'm him, I'm licking my lips because I think there's opportunities to be had. I just don't know how consistent it could be.
I'm glad you pointed out Tavon Gray because I feel like he's severely underrated. Even for, I felt at times with the injuries to the wingbacks and the fullbacks for the national team, they let him go to Jamaica. I felt like he could have been an asset. And so I'm glad you gave him some love. We don't have too much time, but I did want to ask you. So we saw the Hudson River Derby played in the playoffs, and it felt lackluster from the environment. They played at Citi Field. I'm a Mets fan, so I'm there a lot, but it was winterized, so they capped attendance. We know that they are getting a stadium in 2 years. How big will that be, not just for NYCFC, but for the league in itself?
No, it's massive, and it's what I mentioned at the beginning of this interview. There's more soccer-specific stadiums, but if there's one thing you can always say to New York City is that you don't have your own stadium. That's the first thing people say. And not just for that, that's just club banter and whatever, but just for them to
defend a lot about it.
But just for the team and the franchise alone to have a place to call home, to bring teams to your fortress in big games such as, a playoff game against your rival, that will take you so far. I think it's the only time they can go to that next level. They've already won a cup, but to go to the next level, you need your own stadium, and they're on the way to that. And I think you'll see a lot change. I can expect big signings coming in as well when they do open that stadium.
Yeah, I hope so. And I was there, and the environment was great. And they probably could have sold that entire stadium out. I think it's 45,000.
Yeah.
And it felt like a missed opportunity where we see, when Portland and Seattle play or both LA teams play.
It's the atmosphere, right? It's the atmosphere. I remember playing at Yankee Stadium. I never played at Citi Field, but Yankee Stadium, you walk into an arena, into a stadium where you're supposed to be hated, but the Gears are not even close enough. So it doesn't really affect me as the opposition player. I'm not really hearing it. It's far away, so it doesn't really affect you. Now, when you walk into like maybe a Kansas City, their stadium, the fans are on top of you.
Yeah.
So
or even Red Bull Arena.
Yeah, Red Bull Arena. Anytime you miscontrol that ball, you're hearing it. Anytime, you know, the game's not going well for you, you're hearing it. And I don't think you get that when you play away against New York City's. You don't get that. It feels like you're playing in a neutral stadium.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think, you know, outside of maybe the first few matches you played there in the Derby, they also, you know, stopped allowing the sell out the building to an extent, or maybe they didn't sell enough. But yeah, I totally agree. And I never thought about the distance between the pitch and you guys. I have so much more to get to, but obviously our time is short. I really appreciate you coming on. I'd love to do this again, maybe closer to the Derby.
Shout me, man. I'm available.
Yeah, awesome. I will definitely do that. But check Bradley Wright-Phillips out every week on, or multiple times a week on the MLS Season Pass. I really appreciate your time, Bradley.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure. Let's talk soon.